Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. You can definitely feel that spring's in the air. It was 13 degrees yesterday outside, and today they're promising 16 degrees, so you know, you can feel the energy in the air. There's plenty more people coming up the allotment now, and I was actually digging last night till it was pitch black. I was trying to get the this bit dug over that I was doing last night, and the only reason I stopped is I couldn't see what I was digging. I thought I was digging the same pit over and over again. But anyway, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Hello, so I'll quickly do the questions that that have come through over the last week. The first one's from Janice Holland, and she's asking how to propagate comfrey. Now, this is the best time of year to do it. Sort of March time is the best time to transplant plants. And all you need to do with comfrey's got quite fibrous sort of tapping roots and other roots sort of going off. And all you need is a finger-sized piece about that big, and just basically put that in another part of the ground, and that will grow off. As long as you've got about, I don't know, probably 3 inches, about 5 centimetres of root, and if you dig the plant up, you can basically snap a bit of root off and put that in another place in your garden or next to it to increase the amount of comfrey that you've got. Or what you can actually do is you tend to find that comfrey will over a number of years will sort of grow out, and you'll have plenty of them anyway. And what you can do is just basically dig the whole thing up. And if you shake it enough, they'll actually separate into separate things. So if you have got a reasonably big plot of comfrey, what you can do is separate them up, sort of dig them up, separate them up, and then just dig them, sort of dig them back in, sort of plant them back in the garden a bit further apart than they were before. Then they'll kind of spread out again, if you like. Obviously, as I explained in last week's episode, there are some varieties of comfrey that seed. The Bockin 14 does not seed, but so the only way you can actually propagate that is from from pieces from the root, etc. But as I say, the best way to do it is just to separate the plants and sort of spread them out, or break some bits of the root off, and sort of bob them in another part of the garden, and they'll grow away. So the next one's from Nigel, and he put a comment on saying that rather than having a bucket like this for his comfrey, what he's actually got is a soil pipe, like a piece of plastic pipe, about kind of 6 or 7 inches in diameter. And what he's got is he puts all the comfrey in that, and he puts a bucket at the bottom with some gauze, and basically he puts a couple of weights on top of it, and as the comfrey breaks down, all of the comfrey juice or whatever then collects in the tub at the bottom. So that's another way of doing it. So I might take him up on that idea. I don't know yet. I'll have to see what pipe I can get. But thank you, Nigel, for your comments. The next one's from Winter Squash, and she was saying that she's got he's got a polytunnel, and they put some of the like aluminium or some of the sheet under the ground to stop the raspberries invading the polytunnel, which is a really good idea. And to be honest with you, I'll put a comment back. I wish I'd have done that with the raspberries here, because I've got raspberries coming through on the asparagus. So if you ever put in raspberries in to stop them from spreading, it might be an idea to put some kind of barrier in, actually in the ground, just to contain them a little bit. But if you've got open ground, you don't really need to worry. But if you put anything near them, it might be worthwhile putting something in, I don't know, about 18 inches into the ground round them to stop them from kind of spreading all over the place. The next one's from Ray Green. Hi Ray, and he was saying he'd got some nettle tea from last year, and would it be any good? No, I don't think you're going to do any plants any harm, but most certainly if you make like comfrey juice or nettle tea, or sort of any of the sort of liquid, your liquid from your worm, etc. It will most certainly lose its potency with time. So what I would say is, really you need to be using it when it's kind of no more than sort of 3 to 6 months old. However, having said that, as I put in your note, there's no reason why you can't put it on the plants. I can't see that it's going to cause any harm, but most certainly, the nutrients in it will have sort of broken down a little bit. But by all means, put it on your plants. Aaron's allotment, he sent a message in with regards to the rotating of crops, etc., from the episode last week, and he says basically, first year he puts in potatoes, then the next year he digs into the soil manure, and then he puts his beans in. So year 1 is potatoes, year 2 are beans, year 3 he puts lime on the ground and plants his brassicas, then year 4 he puts in onions, roots, etc., and then he alliums, and then he puts in with those he puts in blood, fish and bone, and then he digs in muck again, then to start again for the potatoes. He said he hasn't done a complete cycle yet, but he says that's the sort of the 4-year plan that he's got. So he's going potatoes, beans, brassicas and onions, and to be honest with you, it made a lot of sense with what he was doing, because he's digging manure, lime, blood, fish and bone, and he's getting loose soil for his beans, and he's getting firm soil for his brassicas. So that seems a good way to to do it. The next one's from Richard Sydenham, who says he doesn't rotate some of his crops, and he says his potatoes and onions, basically the nightshade family, like to be in the same ground. Now, he said he's had his potatoes in the same place for 25 years, his tomatoes in the same place for 30 years. And he said, and obviously chilies and peppers are also in the same family, so he could also do that. And he says they like their own compost. Now, with potatoes, really, there's no diseases in the ground as such. The thing you need to be worried about with potatoes is typically airborne, which is the blight. And I know farmers that have potatoes in the fields time and time again. So I'm sure there's a lot of logic, with what Richard is saying. Really, the crops that you need to rotate are the brassicas. They're the ones that have got ground type disease, and if you keep them in the same place year in year out, those are the ones that sort of build up disease in the ground. So really, when you're rotating crops, it's some of the crops you don't necessarily need to rotate, but these crops will clean the ground for other crops. So that's why the Royal Horticultural Society suggests that you rotate all of your crops round, as much as possible. But really, the ones that benefit the most are most certainly the brassica family. So the next one's from Shannon Robinson. She was also talking about the rotation. She says she has a 4-year rotation, but because of the climate that she's in, she's got all year round gardening, so very lucky for that. Obviously she's in a part of the world where you can do that, and basically she's saying that she has a 4-year rotation with all of her plants apart from her beans, a run of beans, and I actually learned something this week, to be honest with you. I had to do a bit of research on the internet, but I didn't realise before now, but runner beans are actually perennials. Obviously in the UK, you plant your runner beans and then at the end of the year they die down, and so I always assume that they're actually annuals. But if you actually dig the root up and keep them warm in the UK, or if you're in a higher, sort of warmer climate, you can actually get a second year out of your runner beans. The second year is typically less productive, so you are better planting them sort of fresh every year, but you can get runner beans which will go through more than one season. So I was pleased to find that. Katie Lee is number 9. She said also she doesn't rotate her runner beans. She always keeps them in the same place, and there's nothing wrong with that, because the runner beans again, I haven't got any kind of soil diseases as such. I mean, the things with runner beans are aphids and and slugs and stuff like that. That's the thing you need to be worried about. So there's nothing wrong with not rotating runner beans. And to be honest with you, my runner beans typically stay in the same kind of place. The reason for rotating runner beans was what I was explaining last week. Is runner beans put nitrogen into the soil. Basically, they take the nitrogen from the air and then they turn it down. And with the mycorrhizal fungi and the and their root systems, what they do is actually make like little nodules on the roots which store the nitrogen. And when you take your beans out, if you leave the roots in the ground and dig them back in, all that nitrogen stays in the ground, and obviously it's the nitrogen that you need for brassicas. So you know, that's kind of why I was explaining that you grow your beans and your peas and etc. And then the following year you follow them with the beans which need the nitrogen. That was the kind of point I was trying to make. But there's no reason why you can't leave beans in exactly the same place every year, because they're putting stuff in the ground, they're not taking it out. So really it's the brassicas, as I say, they're the ones that need to rotate. Nigel from Wolverhampton put another one. Again, he's keeping his beans in the same place. What he's got is a scaffolding bar set up, and he said he's planning to keep his beans in the same place year on year out. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just make sure your brassicas move. That's they're the ones that are important. Dead for Poets was the next one. Thank you for your comment. And they were saying how to use chicken manure. Chicken manure, really, it depends on the chicken manure that you've got. If you get chicken manure in, what you'll find from a farm, what you'll find is there's a lot of the actual chicken muck in there. So the proportion of straw to chicken muck is kind of quite low. So you need to be careful with that, because it's obviously quite acidic, and when you're digging it in the ground, you're putting a lot of you put a lot of nutrients in there, but you can affect the acidity of your soil quite a lot. If you are doing that, getting it from a farm, what I would suggest you do is you try to sort of rot it down, put some lime with it, and rot it down over like at least a few months, ideally a year, if you're going to do that, and wait till it's all kind of nicely rotted down. If, like me, you've got your own chickens and you're putting plenty of straw in there, so if you look at the chicken manure I get out of my chickens, it's 9/10 straw, to be honest with you. So what I'm digging in isn't that rich in chicken muck as such. There's a lot of straw and sort of carbon in there, so I just dig it straight in the ground. So this time of year, from the end of the year to the kind of now, when I'm starting to get the ground ready, I'm constantly digging in chicken manure, which comes straight out of the chickens. I don't rot it down at all, I just put it straight in the ground. During the year where I'm actually growing stuff, during the growing season, what I do is I fill the black bins with it, and what I do then is that then sort of rots down during the summer. What I'll tend to do is fill it with chicken manure, then I'll put some grass cuttings on top, just to keep it moist, to make it basically break down. Perhaps add some water if it gets too hot, and then at the end of the year, sort of August, September, October, when I'm taking crops out, what I'll do then, particularly where the potatoes have been, I will then put the muck down on the ground and sort of dig that in, and then over the winter it then rots down even further in the ground. So that's the best way with chicken manure. But if you are getting it delivered from a farm, it is going to be quite rich. Don't put too much on the ground, because it is going to you'll burn your plants, and the ground will become too acidic, so just be careful with that. But really, with chicken manure, if you've got your own chickens, if I was you, I'd just dig it straight in, to be honest with you. The next one is from Gardening with Puppies. Thank you for your comment. And she's basically said, going from the comments of pallets, that they are a real treasure, and sort of underestimated. Now this week I had a bit of good news. I went round and I managed to get 9 pallets this week, which I'm going to be using for a whole manner of things. I'm going to be doing a new compost, and I'm also going to be making some sort of decking to go in here to put the plants on whilst they're growing, which is going to double up as a fence. You'll see this later on, to go down, because when I grow my potatoes, they tend to fall over onto the path, so I'm going to put a temporary path up the side to stop the potatoes falling on the path. But the reason I put this comment in was basically, a lot of people tend to be frightened of asking for stuff, and really, if you're an allotment here, you don't want to be going out and spending too much money on stuff. And all I did this week was, there's a building site nearby, and they've just built sort of, I don't know, 25 houses or so, and they're just 45 houses, sorry, and they're just coming to the end of the build, and there's a lot of pallets and all sorts of stuff lying about. And all I did is I went down and I spoke to I found out who was the site supervisor, a bloke called Kieran. And I just went up to him. I said, I've got an allotment round the corner. I'm after pallets to make stuff and all that. So he said, I wish you'd have come round to me last week. He said, I've got thousands of pallets and it's cost me £450 to get rid of them. So you're actually doing them a favour as well, because they're not. And he said, how many do you want? He says, there's a load here and there's a load here. He said, you're welcome to as many as you want. Just take them. He said, you're going to come round tonight? I said, I'll be round in 10 minutes. And he said, well, bring your car round. And he said, and take them. He said, do you want any more? He says, do you want this fence as well? And I said, well, if you're throwing it away, I can most certainly use the wood. He said, come round on Monday, you can have that as well. So all you've got to do, it's the old saying, if you don't ask, you don't get. But I just want to say thank you for Gardening with Puppies for the comment. Pallets are a real, they are a real treasure, and you can make so many things with pallets. Now, a couple of weeks ago, on the 12th episode in February, I put out a list of 36 ways of reusing pallets for making stuff for your garden. So I'll put a link across the bottom to that video. So if you didn't see that and you want some ideas how to use pallets, maybe you've got some, or you know where to get some, and you want some ideas of what you can make for your allotment. Then there's 36 ideas in that episode. So I'll just put a link across the bottom for you. The next comment comes from Mark Davies. Hi Mark, thank you for all your comments. And if you remember, last week I was talking about growing potatoes in buckets, and Mark is the leading expert in this field. He's been doing it for years, and he knows most certainly what he's doing. And he was saying, in a 30-litre bucket, you put your potato in, and basically you're saying a couple of times of the week you need to put about 2 litres of water in there. Don't water the plant, obviously water the roots, don't get the leaves wet. Mark's going to be putting out some videos in the next couple of months with him planting his potatoes in there. So obviously Mark Davies is one to watch. If you want to grow some potatoes in buckets. I'm going to have a go this year, because I've not grown potatoes in buckets before. I've always grown them in either bins or actually in the ground, the traditional way. So, but Mark's the one to look for if you wanted to grow potatoes in buckets, because he's done it in the past and he's had some really good results. So that was the questions for this week. Okay, so we're going to start talking about seeds, and these are available in Wilco's at the moment. A really good buy, and in these, basically what you get is 5 little containers like that with 4 sort of compartments in each one. You get the green tray for them all to sit in, and then you also get the sort of the polythene lid. And I know people have been using these for a few years. They do last sort of 5 or 6 years if you look after them. So for £2 they are really worthwhile. But what we're going to do now is what we can start putting in at the moment is there's a few things really. But what I'm going to start to do is to put in the herbs. Now this year I'm going to grow a few more herbs than I did last year. And the first one I'm going to grow by Morgan and Thomas is Old English Thyme. I don't know if you can see that. These are seeds that I picked up last year, and basically I paid I think 20p for those seeds. The next herb is sweet basil. Now these are herbs that when I was young and I started to grow herbs sort of 30 years or so ago, I kind of went mad and grew every herb. But I think sort of quite quickly you sort of discover you can go mad with it. Well, at least I did anyway. They're sweet marjoram. Again, I paid 20p for these seeds at the back end of last year. And the other one is there's 2 types of basil. I'm going to be growing sweet basil, which is good for a whole manner of things. Everything from spaghettis. You can actually use this as a salad leaf as well, or you can just put it in sandwiches and stuff like that. It's quite nice. And also I'm going to be growing another type of basil, which is this variety here, as you can see, that's a sort of smaller leafed one. This one's really more ornamental. If you're going to grow for sort of eating, really, that's the type to go for, the sweet basil. And those 3 are by Sutton, and the other one's by Thomas and Morgan. So to grow these seeds, basically all I've done is I've put some really good quality fine compost into the into the little modules. What I'm going to be doing is growing 2 modules of each type. So if we just start with the sweet basil, what I'm doing here, I'm just flicking the packet just to get all the seeds down to the bottom, and because these don't come in, sometimes you get little cellophane wrappers inside, and other times you don't know. Really, with you know, with herbs, you don't want too much. I mean, these 8 sort of modules here will be more than enough for me. As you can see, the seeds are quite small. It's probably got a few too many there. So what I'm going to do is probably use about half of them. So there are the seeds. I don't know if you can see that, but it's actually 24 degrees in this greenhouse today. You know, considering it's March, it's really good. Anyway, there are the seeds, and basically what I'm going to do is sort of gently sprinkle some of those on the surface of the compost. I'm putting around about 10 or so seeds in the top of each one. You know, and that's going to be more than enough. And basically, what I can do then is sort of plant this out in clumps, and then I can just pull off there. Now, the nice thing about herbs like this is basically what you can do is take a little bit of each one. You know, you can have some basil, some thyme, and some marjoram, and then you can put that in. Because obviously, you know, when you're making spaghetti and stuff like that, you have mixed herbs, and it's nice in sandwiches and stuff, you know, to have a mixture as well. So there are the seeds. They're just sort of, I'm just making sure that they're not sort of in any kind of sort of too many in one place, so they're not all clumped together. Now the important thing is this compost is quite fine. I don't know if you can see this, but that's the kind of compost you need. You know, it's got quite a nice sort of consistency to it. And all I'm going to do, it actually advises you on the seed packet to put some vermiculite on the top, but to be honest with you, it's one thing I've never really bothered with, vermiculite. I think you do get slightly better results by doing that, but I like to just put a little bit of, just a sprinkle on the top, and I typically just get a pinch of compost and then just sort of sprinkle it on from between your finger and thumb, and that's more than enough. All you literally need to do is just basically cover the seed, and you'll find you get really good germination. Now, the one really important thing is to do is not to water these with a watering can, because what you can do is the seeds can float to the top. So like many others, I've got one of these spraying containers, and obviously what I can do is just very gently spray the water on. You don't need a lot, you just need to get the plants going really. And I shan't really water these again for another couple of days, but that's, you know, that's a really good soak considering the seeds. That's more than enough to get them going. Obviously, what you need to do is make sure that you label them, to make sure that you don't mix them up. It's very easily done. When you're putting in loads of seeds like I do, you know, always make sure that you've got them labelled, and then they'll go into the tray. So basically, it's just a case of repeating that again. So if we do the marjoram next, obviously the other basil's going to be almost the same. I think we've actually got in here we got the standard little packet with the seeds in. And with herbs, you know, you tend to get sort of thousands of seeds, and you don't really need too many of them. So what you can do is, seeds like this are typically good for quite a few years. I mean, these will most certainly be okay for next year. Now these are the I'll just get them out. These things are really fine. There we go, that's more than enough. So this is the sweet marjoram seeds. I don't know if you can see that, but they are really fine. They're like almost like grains of sand. You know, they're incredibly small. So what I'm going to be doing is, again, just very lightly sprinkling those onto the surface of the soil. Like that. That's more than enough in there. And I guess I'm probably putting about 20 seeds in each one. Now what we can do is, when these have all germinated and started to come through with these, what I can do is actually split these little things into two when I'm, because what I will probably do is these will be up in, in a couple of weeks, and what I might do is sort of grow them on in a sort of bigger pot. So what I might do is split them. It is ideal, to be honest with you, not to split them up when they're too young, because obviously you're damaging the roots. But again, you just need a little teeny sprinkle of compost on here. And as you can probably hear, the wind's picking up now, which is not ideal when you're dealing with really small seeds. But this is why it's important you've got fine compost, because what you don't want to do is have compost with lumps in it. And I find as well the John Innings seed compost tends to be a little bit heavy for things like this. The important thing is not to have too much. Too many big lumps in there, and you also don't need too much sort of fertiliser or sort of too much goodness in there. I mean, the important thing is you've got a bit of fertiliser in there, but the important thing is you're keeping the seeds moist whilst they're germinating. So that's the sweet marjoram. So I'll just again make sure you put that in. Now the soil is still pretty loose in there. I haven't sort of pressed it down too hard at all, because you want the seeds to be able to sort of get in there. The water's going to take any sort of air bubbles out. Most certainly on the surface anyway when you water it. But that's more than sufficient to put the seeds. Now we'll just do the thyme seeds. Now this is the only one from Thomas and Morgan. And because thyme is slightly different. Again, the actual method of growing these is exactly the same. You want to be placing them, under just a sprinkling of soil. And really, you can tell. I always go as a sort of rule of thumb: the smaller the seed, the shallower it needs to be in the ground. It's not always the case, but these are like again. Actually, I don't need that many because I've only got one ready so far. But as you can see, these are again really small seeds, and you only need a slight sprinkling in each one. So I'm putting probably about 10-15 seeds in each one, possibly more than that. That'll do fine. And again, exactly the same method. You just need a bit of compost between your finger and thumb. You don't need to be overly fussy with this, just to make sure that you've got sort of plenty, and any sort of long straggly bits like that, just pop that back in your tub. Now that's at least the first time, and what I'll do is I'll continue to do the others now. As I say, there's the other basil variety that I'll be putting in, but it's exactly the same as the one I've just shown you, and this is the thyme. So I'll be doing one more thyme plant, and then what I'll do is when I've got the other pots full and ready to go, I'll just show you the other seeds I'm going to be putting in today. So that's basically the Old English thyme. Again, put a label in there, give them a bit of water. Again, you don't need a lot of water, and try not to sort of blast them out of the way. I mean, the important thing is you give them just enough water to get them going. They're not too, they're not completely soaked. But the important thing is with the little seeds is they can come to the surface if you're not careful. So that's the first one. That's the first one complete. So all I need to do now is just put the little lid on, and they're all ready to go. So I'll just put them somewhere safe at the back, and I'll continue with the others. So I'll just stop the video now, and I'll come back in a moment. Okay, the hydrangeas, as you can see, really are shitty now. Now these are the cuttings that we took last year, at the back end of last year. So I'm not sure about what's going on with this one. I think it possibly might be growing, but what I'll be doing now is, because obviously these have clearly rooted, at least these four have. This one here, oh, actually no, there is actually some little shoots at the bottom, so that one is growing. What I'll be doing with these this week is potting them up into larger pots, so that they can grow on, and they'll be probably ready next year to put into the ground. So I'll need another year of them growing in a pot, I think. You could potentially put these in the ground now, or sorry, this year, and sort of let them grow. But I think they will actually grow a bit better if I grow them in the greenhouse, so I can keep my eye on them. And these are all starting to these lavender plants, which I grew from seed, haven't been the best plants I've ever grown, to be honest with you. They are very slow in growing. So what I'm going to try and do is actually grow some cuttings this year, because cuttings tend to be a lot faster growing than growing things from seed. So what I will do is take some cuttings as well this year off some lavender that I've already got on the garden, and that's the cutting I showed you last year off the rosemary, and I shall be potting that up into a bigger pot and giving it a bit of fresh soil as well this week, just to make sure it's it's got a good start in the season. So I hope this episode of Jim's Allotment Garden has been of some use to you. There's going to be plenty more stuff coming up. The momentum of stuff is really increasing now. I can see things sprouting up all over the place, and it's time to get in there with your spade and start digging all of your borders out and all the rest of it, and all your boxes ready for your vegetables. I'm going to chance my arm and put a few seeds in this week, so there will be another episode coming up very shortly of me putting some seeds, and I'm going to be putting some tomatoes in the new pots that I've got from Wilco's, and there's all sorts of other flowers that I'm going to start putting in now. Really, it's a little bit early to start with vegetables, because there is still a chance, obviously, of frost till the sort of the back end of May, so I don't want to start anything off too early. But anyway, I hope this episode has been of some use to you. Please do put your comments, subscribe below, and I'll get back to you on any comments. And thank you to everybody that's subscribed so far, and I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.